Okay, so today we're on part 3 of looking at light and weight and their effect on sunflower shoot growth. Quick overview of where we are already. In part 1 we sewed our trays and put a different weight on them. 6 pounds in the front, 14.5 pounds in the back. Yesterday I showed you where we were at with growth on both of these and how we could see how much the lighter tray had been pushed up relative to the heavier tray. Today is now uncovering day, and there's 2 things about uncovering day to take into consideration here. One is it's our scheduled uncovering day, so we have a good sense of what our growth looks like, and so we know when to uncover. The other thing is in the front we actually have a live tray over top of it growing. And so one of the things that requires a certain day to be an uncovering day is this needs to be harvested, or vice versa. This needs to be harvested because this needs to be uncovered. So I'm going to uncover this today. I'm not going to harvest it until tomorrow because I just don't want to deal with it right now, which is a nice thing about home production. And then we'll take a look at things here. We'll take a look at the lights, and then we're going to rotate these around. So I will bring the camera closer so we can take a look at some of the stuff in here that's happening and make a few comments on that. So I'm going to move this closer now. We did the same view yesterday. I'm just going to point out a few things here. So number 1 is, hopefully you can see there, we've got a much yellower light here and a much bluer light here. So the light in the back has a Kelvin value of 3000, so it's more of a soft light. And in the front, the light has a Kelvin value of 6500. And so this is a cool light. Usually cool lights are something you'd see in a workshop where you need really crisp light so you can see things in detail. Now, when we looked at our trays yesterday, I showed you that I could put my finger under this one a little bit, but I couldn't slip it under this one at all. And if you notice, I still can't do that. Yet you can clearly see there's much more growth here and here as well. So one of the things that's happened is the weight of this tray has kind of toppled the sunflowers over there. So we'll take a look there, we'll uncover these and talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to take this one off the top. And then I'm going to take this one off the back. I tend to do it in 2 stages, by taking the weight off first and then the tray. So what we see here is a significant difference in growth, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see. This one is quite tall, and over the course of the video we may see these stand up a little bit. As the pressure comes off, there's a little bit of a rebound effect, and so that'll happen naturally. What I will do over the next few days is actually some time lapse, so we'll get a sense of what the growth looks like and how they recover. So this is our front tray, much taller, a lot more greens there. I know you don't have a perfect view, but you can see things are reaching much more. And this one here in the back, they're a little shorter. And I can actually see germination in the middle wasn't too great there. And I'll have to take a look to really get a sense of maybe what the issue was there. It's hard to know right away. But I know from experience that this is going to recover. So these trays should both be pretty good. I'm probably going to get a better yield from the front tray than the back tray, but there's a number of things we're going to look at. So the next step we're going to do here is we're going to rotate these trays. And the reason I want to do that is I want to have half of each tray in the front and half of each tray in the back, because they've actually germinated in different conditions. This one's closer to the wall, this one's on open space. This one's got more access to natural light, this one doesn't. So those are factors that could affect germination. So, plus the weight. So there's a lot of things going on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate them. And I'm going to do, does it matter which one I do where? I don't think so. So I'm going to rotate them around like this, which I generally wouldn't do. I'm only doing this for the purposes of looking at the different light. And because this front one is a little bit higher up, I'm actually going to take it right down and get it lower as well. So it's not raised up like this front one is here. So take this down. And this one as well. And I may actually raise these back up, but if I raise them back up, I'm going to raise them both the same amount. So they're both the exact same distance from the light. I'm just going to rotate this. Actually, yeah, I am going to put this. I'm going to put these trays just back underneath here. So, see, I'm just going to bring this up a little bit between the heating pad and the tray. And same thing with this one here. Oh, no, I don't have another tray. It's going to have to stay off. Oh, yeah, I do have another tray. Okay. So one of the reasons to have these up closer is I like to have them a relatively close distance to the light. I actually would like to have them about here, but this is actually fine enough. I'm going to put them quite close together. I like to keep my trays right up against each other. So now the slightly shorter tray is on this side in the back, and then the taller one is here. But what we'll do over the next few days is take a look and see how growth differs between the front and the back. Now, blue light in general really promotes vegetative growth, whereas when we look at more yellow light, it's a light that's more important later in the growth process for plants when they're getting into fruiting and flowering and whatnot, flowering and fruiting. And so when we're just doing short cycles, we don't need to think about the whole life cycle of the plant. We really just want the vegetative growth, which was why we want something with a higher K value. So the question we're trying to answer in a way here is, what happens when you use a light that doesn't have a high K value, that's a softer light? And what we should see is these plants in the back being much taller. Now, it's not so much that they're stretching for the light like we might have them in shady conditions and they might reach for the light. It's that the different types of light have different effects. And when you have something like pea that has many stems and has got leaves coming off the side, in that case, what it does is it lengthens the internodal space. So the space in between each of the leaves, it gets quite a bit lengthened. So we should see over a few days that we're getting taller growth in the back and slightly shorter in the front. Now, in terms of the differences in the two crops, this one is definitely shorter to start out with. There's been much more pressure on it, and so it didn't push up as much. And something that they're both experiencing is a little bit of a bend in the stem at the bottom. And you can probably see it in some of these here closer. Not as much on the sides because they were able to poke out the sides, but some of these in here, like this one here, it's got a real bend in it. Now, sunflower is a crop that recovers fairly well from that bend and often will straighten out. Whereas other crops like pea, they'll often keep that bend in there. So one of the things that does is it makes your crop shorter, which means it's actually harder to cut the crop and keep it a longer length. So you need to know each of your crops and how they respond to weight. Generally, sunflower can handle a lot of weight. I'll be honest, I'm actually quite disappointed in the looks of this tray with the poor germination in here. I'm guessing this is actually a bit of a water issue, just from looking at it. But generally, I would get much more uniform germination in there. So we can still see it shorter, but it's not going to be as good an experiment as I thought because of that poor germination. However, what we will see is, even though there is poor germination there, we should still see by harvest time that we're getting pretty good growth. So that's all we're going to cover for the third part of this. I will do the fourth one in about 3 more days, and so that by that point these are going to be at the harvest stage. So we'll get to take a really good look at how they're different, and then I might either do the harvest in that video or just not subject you to the harvest and then do a follow-up about the weights that come out of that. What we are going to look at is if it's making a significant difference in weight, but because we have more pretty poor germination here, I don't think it's going to be a fair comparison. And as I talked about in the second video, if we want to get really good results doing a trial like this, we have to have multiple replicates. And so if I had 3 with the 6-pound weight and 3 with the 14.5-pound weight, that would be much, much more robust in terms of experimental design. But this is not a university, this is my kitchen. So what we're just doing is using this as a lesson to better understand growing dynamics and the different factors that affect growth. So yeah, stay tuned in a few days for the follow-up on that, and hopefully you found that useful.